Hi everyone, in this C++ tutorial I'm going to be going over and diving deeper into user input, and I'm also going to teach you some new concepts that you are definitely going to need in order to master this programming language. So we all know that by now, if you've been watching my videos, that you take user input by creating some variable, initializing some variable, and then type in cin, and then type in the name of the identifier or the variable that you created, okay? And then you would see out whatever that variable is if you want to print that result, okay? But let's say you want to create input strings, okay? So it's all we do cin. You might automatically think, oh, why not do cin and then name and then cout name and line. But first, let me see. Let me try the what is your name? All right, so far so good. Okay, so now if we run this, let's say I'm gonna type in Mary and then Johnson. Notice here it only prints out the first thing I typed, or the first word I typed, which is Mary, okay? And that's a big problem because it's not going to help you or let you update, or it's not going to let you get the full user input in your program, okay? So what should we do about this? What do we do about this whole thing, okay? Notice how here it only outputs the first thing I typed in, which is Mary, and everything else after that is ignored or deleted, okay? So thankfully, C++ built a certain function that allows the user to not ignore white space and take in every kind of user input until you press the enter key. Okay, so what we would do is something like this. Okay, first but let me go over the getLine function first. Okay, so it's gonna have a syntax like this. So getLine, all lowercase, with parentheses, of course with a semicolon. Cin is the first argument in the parameter because we are taking user input, obviously, comma, and then the next parameter, you're taking user input of whatever variable you want. So in this case, it would be name. All right, in this certain case, it all depends on how you name your identifiers first off. Okay, so it would be something like this. All right, so there are two arguments in this getLine function that allows you to take in the entire input until you press the enter key. It doesn't ignore white space, and it doesn't ignore last names or symbols or anything like that. So that's the syntax of the getLine function. So in order to solve this problem, so what is your full name? That would be a more appropriate question for this problem. If you're given something like this is how we dive deeper into user input. How do we solve this problem? We would use getLine, cin, comma, and then name, which would be a semicolon, and then cout, let's say, your full name is, oops, and then name and line. Okay, so let's try this again. If I run this, let's say Mark, and then I'm going to say Stahlheimer, for example. Notice here, it prints out the entire thing that I inputted. So the main difference, so let's review this one more time just to be sure that you will understand this. So the main difference between cin and getLine with the two arguments in the parameters, or the built-in getLine function that C++ made, is that cin ignores white space. But however, getLine, I'm just going to call the arguments x or y, does not ignore anything until you press the enter key. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what is white space? White space is, notice how I put a space between the first name and the last. So this is considered white space. So cin ignores white space and even everything beyond white space, even this whole thing. So that's why not only the white space gets deleted, but everything after that also gets deleted. While getLine, on the other hand, doesn't ignore any of that, and it doesn't delete or throw out anything once you press the enter key for user input. So if you're in a situation where you need to enter a full name with just one variable, okay, and first and last name, this is a great opportunity, or this is a great example of how you would approach this problem. Now, since we got that out of the way, I want to teach you something that you will definitely need in C++, in programming in general, but mainly this is used a lot in C++, since C++ is a programming language which focuses and is the best on game development. So we're going to be focusing on if statements, something what are called if statements. All right, an if statement are called conditional statements. Remember that, okay? So what are conditional statements? Conditional statements are statements or blocks of code that allow the program to execute something under a certain circumstance or condition. Okay, so conditional statements are statements which can be blocks of code or any kind of code in general that allows the program to execute something or do something or tell the user something under a certain condition. Okay, so what that means is, let's say I go to a bar, okay, and you need to be 21 at least to go to a bar. So this is a perfect example or a starting example of an if statement, which is one of the conditional statements. All right, so, and if you're under 21, then you can't go into a bar. But if you are 21 or older, then you are allowed to go into a bar, because in the United States, at least, you need to be 21 to drink alcohol. So let's say you're given this instruction: write a program that allows the user to check if a person is old enough to go to a bar. Okay, so this is an example of an if statement. Let me go over if statements first before I solve this practice problem with you, okay? An if statement is a statement where, like I said previously, it executes under a certain condition. So let's say if the person is 21 or older, then the person in this circumstance is allowed to enter a bar legally. Otherwise, if you're under 21, then you cannot. You are not allowed to enter a bar legally in the United States. Whatever country you're from or what you're watching from, there may be different laws, but I'm just explaining it from where I'm from. So this is how you would approach the problem. So you would do int age. Remember, there are no doubles for ages unless you want to enter a fractional number, but that's not really necessary in this problem. So how do we write an if statement? This is I'm going to show you the syntax. I'm going to go slower to make sure that you would understand fully in this case, okay? So if condition execute this, okay? So this is a syntax of an if statement. So you first write out the keyword if, then next with two parenthesis symbols, followed by two curly braces. This forms the body of the statement. Anything with curly braces is the body of either a statement or a loop, which I'll go over later throughout this tutorial series. So you put the condition, whatever it is, inside these two parenthesis symbols. And so the compiler checks the condition, and then it will execute whatever is inside the body of the statement if the condition yields true. All right, which brings me to another data type I want to bring over. So Booleans. Booleans are a data type that have only two values, either true or false. Okay. But in programming languages, you would type the data type as Boolean, the full name, okay? But in C++, we don't do that. To create a Boolean variable, we would write bool, just bool, and then let's give it some name. Let's say M, and then it would be equal to true, or bool N is equal to false. So by binary terms, these are the smallest variables in terms of how much data it contains. So if, all right, since if this condition does not yield true, then it doesn't execute whatever is inside the body. But if you want something else to be executed anyway, regardless if this first statement will not be true, you will write the keyword else, then surround that with curly braces as well. Notice how this is the end of the body of the statement. Execute this then. All right, so notice how if this condition isn't met, and so this doesn't execute this, then we would have, then this if statement would execute this part of the problem instead. Okay, so these are the basic examples, or this is the basic syntax of how if statements work. So back to the practice problem. Write a program that allows the user to check if a person's old enough to go to a bar. All right, so I already wrote int age. All right, now the getLine function that I showed you earlier compared to CN, those work mainly and only with strings or C strings, which I will go over in another tutorial video in this series. Okay, so you don't have to worry about what C strings are right now. So int age. So first we write the condition if age is greater than or equal to 21. You know what, I'm old enough I'm just gonna leave it as is. Okay, so old enough is equal to true. And so therefore you would write Cia. You don't have to write this particular part to solve the problem. I'm only integrating booleans into the problem because I didn't introduce those into the data types video that I did earlier in the series. So that's why I'm only integrating this right now. But just to solve the problem in general, you don't have to put booleans or do anything unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay, so cout. So if age is greater than or equal to 21, that means this is true. You are old enough to go to a bar. Cheers. That's just a funny way of telling the else. Oh yeah, if statements don't only have to end with the word else itself. It could just, you can also put else if as well, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly legal for if statements. So else if age is less than 21, then old enough. Like I said, you don't have to put these, either this or this, into the problem. I'm only integrating booleans here because I didn't introduce those into the data types video that I did earlier. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now cout, sorry, you are not old enough. Maybe next time. End line. Okay, so basically that's it. Here we go. We're done. This is how you solve a kind of problem like this. All right. But we need to enter an age because in order for the compiler to check that this if statement. So we would do cn age. All right, cout. But first, let me make this a little more entertaining. Cout, how old are you? Okay, so if I run this, how old are you? Let's say I am 23. It's gonna say that I am old enough to go. Okay, so in this particular problem, you don't have to, I'm only integrating those two and these three Boolean statements in there. If I remove all of these, it doesn't even make any difference if if the problem is solved correctly or not. It doesn't. So let's say I am 45. Yes, I am old enough to go to a bar. Cheers. Or I run this again, but let's say I am 19. Sorry, you're not old enough. Maybe next time. Notice how, since the criteria in the first if statement does not, the requirements or the criteria isn't met, it doesn't execute this part, but it meets the criteria of this else if statement. It executes this part instead. The only time where you would put else, I would say, is not a valid input. What does this mean? It means that if neither the criteria is met on this if statement, or if neither of the criteria is neither met in this statement, then by default it will execute whatever this is, wherever it says else, without the if next to the else keyword. So if I run this, and let's say I don't enter an age, I'm just gonna say a word, okay? So Tommy. Sorry, you're old enough, maybe next time. But, oh yeah, the thing that you just saw, it just demonstrates how C strings works. And then I will show you, those are way ahead of the tutorial series. And I'll show you what those are later. So don't worry about that right now. So how old are you? Let's say I'm 67. Yes, you are old enough. Not a valid input. All right, and so that's pretty much it. Let's go over another problem. Let's go over another practice problem involving if statements, okay? So you can master this. Write a program that allows the user to check how many points they have in order to win the highest score possible. So for this practice problem now, this is somewhat entertaining because we are creating a game, all right, a sentence game. So let's say cout int points, all right. I'm going to declare, so I'm going to create, that allows the user with 5 questions in this game. So therefore we would need to do something like this. Cout, hi, welcome to this game. Answer 5 questions correctly, and you will win the highest score possible. All right, so now let's create a few variables. String y int z. I'm just gonna create some random variables just in case you wanna figure something out, okay? Just for demonstrational purposes. So Sia, hi, welcome to this game. Answer 5 questions correctly and you'll win the highest score possible. Let's make this a history game, okay? So see out, when did George Washington become the first president? Or rather, what year? All right, so CN year, int year. Let's say X, okay? For demonstrational purposes, if X is 1789, points increment by 1. Okay, so don't worry about these two operands or operators for now. Excuse me. I will go over those in the next video, I promise you. I'll make a video dedicated to all the notations and all the points that you need to know, or the symbols, okay? So let's see out correct. Let's start with 1 equal to 1. All right. Let's see. So this is the first question. Sorry. Who did the midnight ride on April 18th, 1775? So remember what I taught you earlier in this video. Get line CN Y, okay? Enter the full name. If Y is equal to Revere or Y is equal to Paul Revere, start off with 0 and then I keep forgetting the quotation marks. Forgive me, please. Good job. So this is the third question now. Cout. Remember, this is a practice problem or an example of how we can apply if statements or if else statements into C++ programming. So be sure to pay attention and take your notes, because this is going to be very important for you later on throughout this video and throughout your programming in C++. So cout who wrote the declaration independence. All right, and I'm going to make this a string. Okay, so get line cnz if z is equal to Thomas Jefferson, or z is equal to Thomas Jefferson I'll fix whatever that is in a bit. Okay, so points plus plus, and then sometimes this IDE acts pretty strange, so forgive me if I'm hesitating at times that I'm using, But what I just did right here is perfectly legal, and I'll go over those in the next video, integrating all these different symbols and operands that you will need to know, including this one. So fourth question. I know this is a long example, but this is a pretty good way of applying this into your program. So cout is equal to, let's say, when did the Battle of Gettysburg happen? What year? So this time I'm going to do int a, all right, on the top over here. cn a if a is equal to 1863, then you would increment point by 1, and then, or else you have your points taken away, but I'll go over those some other day, okay, in some other video. And then you would do cout correct, good job. Now the fifth and last question. cout. And as you can see, we're doing this all in this main function. So deeply later into this C++ tutorial series, I'm going to show you how to do it in a much more organized and less messy way to create code like this. Okay, so try not to get all upset about it for now, please. So cout, let me see. Who shot John F. Kennedy? And now up here, I'm going to write string B. Get line CNB. And I'll explain what parameters are, and arguments and parameters are in future videos as well. So try not to get too harsh about any of it. So get line is if B is equal to Lee Harvey Oswald, or B is equal to execute this and then cout now. Outro of the game. The outro now is basically based on how many points, okay, you got. So we will write cout. Thank you for playing this game. Cout. Here are your points. If points is equal to 4, it's possible. Else here is how many points you have earned. So, see, one more thing. Have a great day. So, all right, so we're done creating something like this. So let's begin. Let's try something. Hold on, let me, probably forgot to clear something first. For some reason it's not. Hold on a second. But you get my point though. If this should work exactly how it should, if you get 4 or 5 points, then you have the highest amount of points possible. Otherwise, if you don't, then that's just how it's gonna go. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.